Maneva na sema PENDREAM TV. PENDREAM TV de osia dem yopo.
And I'm sure we'll all be hearing from the presidency. On this matter, I'll start with Hamza.
Thank you very much, Alhassan. With your permission, maybe after that I will take leave. Our last one is having an event at home.
Okay.
So I need to be present now that I'm also part of the family leadership. First of all, I think that the questions are rooted in issues of integrity. And I have always argued that the most difficult comprehension one would suffer when you have His Excellency President Mahama as president is your failure to follow the personality John Dramani Mahama and to understand what he stands for, his appreciation of our developmental trajectory, and how we can take advantage of that trajectory to not only build the necessary infrastructure in our country, but to a very large extent use that advantage to empower businesses to be able to compete competitively with their foreign counterparts. And you see, Senna, I am worried, and I have been since this matter broke, not because there is an issue of corruption, but the continuous failure of those of us who ought to know better to understand the objectives of the kind of leaders we elect. It is critical. And I remember around the same table, even prior to the election, on one of our morning shoots on this program, I indicated that, look, the last election was not just a contest between the NPP and the NDC. I emphasized an understanding of those who would eventually lead these political parties, and the need for us to begin to imagine or project the leadership styles even before they are given the mandate. Because we made that mistake with His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. And my caution was that we should not make a similar mistake. And I'm making this submission on the basis of not just the expose by the Fourth Estate, but the commentary I have seen so far coming from the New Patriotic Party, and to even a section of the Ghanaian people who mean well, but have been driven by this unfortunate propaganda of the NPP. And I'll respond to say, fortunately I have a history with the Rose Ministry when Alhaji Yunus Afuseni was there. And so I understand in perspective the objectives of His Excellency President Mahama when it comes to that ministry. Senna, a fundamental question of principle is being asked. Did the NDC in opposition criticize sole sourcing? And my answer is in the affirmative with a qualification. And you can cross-check that. Yes, we did. But we did not just criticize sole sourcing, but we criticized the abuse of sole sourcing. And the emphasis was on the abuse. That is why we made a commitment that even upon election we would take a look at the act and see how we could further deal with the issue of sole sourcing, and only make a reservation for national interest projects that we feel that there is a need for urgency and the likes. Because in principle, the law is not bad, but the law also leaves room for potential abuse. And we spoke about that. And the impression should not also be created that the first political party to have criticized the issue of sole sourcing was the NDC. Many have forgotten. Under Mahama one, the likes of Gabi Ochridako took the NDC government to town on the issue of the sole source contract to West Blue, remember, at the ports. and they condemned the decision of the government to go through sole sourcing. So in principle, yes, the NDC criticized the NPP on the adoption of sole sourcing for most of their contracts. We criticize their abuse. But the question we have to ask in relation to this Roads Ministry saga is that, is it different? Yes, in principle, it may not appear different. Now, in form, it may not appear different because sole sourcing is sole sourcing. So if you criticize sole sourcing under Party A, it is only proper that you don't do sole sourcing under Party B. So in form, it may be deceptive. It may appear the same principle, the same position. It may appear as though the NDC is backtracking on the promises it made. But in substance, the NDC has not done anything contrary to the promises we made. We have not. And that is why I said that it is important for you to appreciate the leadership trait of His Excellency President Mahama. Remember somewhere in 2014, 2015, His Excellency President Mahama had cause to engage the nation and told us that as a deliberate policy, indeed, even during the 2024 election, he made references to it, that he decided to identify, with the help of the engineers at the Roads Ministry, some specific local contractors to empower so that they will be able to compete effectively with foreign contractors. And it was that policy decision that birthed the likes of Marapoma. That policy decision in the roads industry alone brought on board in excess of 20 solid local contractors. And indeed, we had to go through sole sourcing, some of them restrictive, because if you had done competitive, their foreign counterparts would have taken the projects from them. And we would not have had the opportunity to empower our local people. And when the presentations were being made at the Road Ministry, one thing was clear. The cost component of local contractors doing the job was going to be higher than their foreign compatriots. You know why? Because the foreign compatriots had done it in a long while, that they had become efficient, and so they could use lesser resources. But the issue was a matter of policy, whether we would allow these critical sectors of our economy to be dominated by foreigners, or we would go through the opportunity cost of incurring a little more cost to empower our local contractors to also become efficient. And President Mahama thought it prudent to adopt that posture and that policy direction. And that is why today you can make references to the likes of Oswald and Co. and the likes of Marapoma, who are doing contracts not just in this country, but other neighboring countries. Thanks to His Excellency President John Dramani Mahama. Give me an example of a local contractor that had capacity before President Mahama became president to venture into other African countries. So understand that drive. And so that is an acceptable use of sole sourcing in our law. And I'll give you another acceptable use of sole sourcing. That same president in the pharmaceutical industry identified about 20 pharmaceutical companies, local companies in this country, if you remember, in line with that policy directive, and supported them in funds in excess of $43 million so that they could become competitive and throw out more jobs to our Ghanaian people. That is foresight. That is how you use the avenue, the legal avenue created in our law books for sole sourcing, to empower people not to abuse the system. People have forgotten. I have in my hand exactly what President Mahama said on the 3rd of March 2025. And that brings me to an example of an abuse of sole source contracts. Senna, remember the economic dialogue? When he was presenting an outlook of the economic situation he inherited, he gave an example of a sole source contract that he had inherited. And this, he said, foreign single source procurement must be the rare exception rather than the norm. We must also subject government projects above a certain threshold to value for money audit. Today is not, don't we have a value for money bill before Parliament? So President Mahama is not a president who speaks anyhow. He's meticulous, and you need to appreciate that. That is the only way you can begin to appreciate many of these decisions that people like mandated to lead in his stead take. And you see, he said, threshold for value for money. And just this morning, I was reviewing some of procurement reports, and there was this procurement for poultry farmers, 10,000 units of something, and it was single source. He didn't end there. He said the reason for single source was urgency, and one company was given the contract to supply 10,000 units of whatever it was. The supplier and the person who assembles it here were not allowed to bid. That's President Mahama saying. So the assembler, the producer, and the one who supplies it in this country, they were prevented from bidding. That is under the NPP. And he said, and so the company that won the contract went to the supplier, bought the item for 4,500, and then sold them to the government for 6,600, walking away with 21 million on that supply alone. I like this. Classical example of an abuse. You cannot, by any stretch of your own imagination, conclude that what happened in this instant is synonymous to what is happening at the Rose Ministry. That's why I'm telling you that in form it may appear the same, but in substance it's not. And we were criticizing the substance largely. So, to understand the issues at stake at the Rose Ministry and the so-called sole source contracts, you need to understand the orientation of the government, and especially the orientation of the roads and highways, because they know the person they represent. The Minister Agboja knows the person he represents. Not so. He represents the president, and he must act in ways that would give confidence to the president. And the only way to do so is to understand the political and economic objectives of the man you are representing. And so, in line with that, you cannot possibly be contemplating launching big push as a minister without thinking of continuing the president's vision of empowering local contractors through that process. So if you want to reduce the debate to issues of how many employees they have, that issue has been perfectly handled. Because like and that was one of the issues that made me a bit uncomfortable, because in the roads industry, it's seasonal. You do not expect contractors to have a standard workforce of say 200, 300 and be paying SMIT contribution monthly when they don't know when the next contract will come. It's seasonal. So if you go on a set as a civil society representative and you are making references to 4 employees or 1 employee, it is simply a manifestation of your failure to appreciate the nitty-gritties of that industry. And that was what I saw as far as the 4th estate investigation is concerned. And Sarah,
yeah, please land on this note.
Oh my goodness, I've not even started, but I'll try.
Yeah, please land.
I'll try. You see, so that point we need to situate this. Now, I was hoping that evidence would be given of any wrongdoing in terms of issues of political abuse for personal benefit. Even the NPP and the 4th estate are unable to demonstrate that. Indeed, you are likely to find companies that were or that are approximately a year or 2 old in the construction industry, but a government that has a desire to build more local contractors will definitely take advantage of this big push agenda to give them such a leaning and support, especially when the funding is available. And so that is what we have done. And that is what my checks at the Ministry of Roads and Highways shows. If it is about our own personal benefits, and what we seek to get, Senator, from that ministry, I'm sure that on this table, I would have been one of the critical voices in support of the Fourth Estate expose. Because personally, I have my issues. But as far as the national interest is concerned, it is difficult to fault the decision of the minister and his directors as far as this particular project is concerned. You can only fault them if you do not understand the substance of the discussion and the objectives of the government. And I am convinced that after everything is said and done, and the report even is presented to His Excellency President Mahama will see his vision in the report that will be presented, and that vision will be defended by this government. Mind you, as a responsible government, we respect the work of the Fourth Estate, and we commend them highly for seeking to bring to the fore what they believe to be contradictory in terms of our promises to the good people of this country. It's something we should commend them for. And that is the reason why many of us are against adopting a posture that appears confrontational, especially when it comes to the works of journalists in this country. Because they are effective partners when it comes to getting our democracy right. And the president we represent on these platforms appreciate that better because he's had the opportunity of working with them. And so, Senator, I can understand the obsession to look for scandals on the part of the New Patriotic Party, even taking advantage of sincere work.
What has New Patriotic Party done, Hamza?
Because I have listened to the debates
are we Fourth Estate?
Where they are making references, where they are making, that's why I have listened to debates where you are making references to the fact that this project has been inflated. It's because of time.
No.
I would have given you examples of contracts that the NPP came to meet in 2016. And subsequently in 2017, in a matter of 1 year, how those contracts were revised in excess of 70% of the original sum. Go to Department of Federal Goods.
Don't go there, Hamza. Please don't go
but these
there.
Are the
don't go there, Hamza.
We are not even being simplistic. We are not even being simplistic when it comes to the cost per kilometer. Because we know that in determining the cost per kilometer, several factors are considered. My brother, some areas are rocky. The pricing formula there is different. Some are easy to deal with. The pricing formula would be far lower. We appreciate this. But even if we are going to compare the leap quantum of increment in terms of the cost of a kilometer of road, compare the figures and the NPP. In a matter of 1 year to what we are witnessing today.
Mr. Suhuyini.
Yes.
Thank you. Very well. I come to my left.
I understand him, but you see, I have my problem with him. Keep referring to NPP, and NPP is not Fourth Estate. You were not. You say you were far away. You now came. You don't understand the direction at which this discussion is going.
Is that what I said?
You see, no. But the point is.
Is that what I said?
No, the point is, Hamza. The point is, it is in our quest as politicians to get political power. I always caution we have to be measured in our promises. Sometimes when you are promising, you forget. What is the Procurement Act says? Single source or sole source is not a crime. It is stated in the law. And it is explained the circumstances under which you can apply it. But you wanted power. And you keep referring abuse. Source law was abused. A lot of contracts to people in Ghana, including the road ministry. People documented it and just kept quiet. Now you assume political power, and everybody knows the promise of then candidate Mahama, now president, big push to link national capital to together critical road infrastructure in this country to get it done. A big push. The idea is to get funding ready. The problem of the ministry has always been, the idea is to get ready fund so that contractors will not suffer and be able to do these works. In that case, maybe a decision will have to be taken, maybe to be able to get it done in time or whatever it is. Then, not until Fourth Estate brought it out. Some of us didn't know it was through sole sourcing some of the contracts were awarded. But when we later realized, personally, I didn't actually, my personal opinion, I didn't see anything wrong with it, based with my reason. From Bole, Tachima Bole, Bomboy road, my problem is to get the road fixed. No, Hamza, don't go. Sit small and listen to it. Get the road. You go. Just sit. Just sit here. So you get the road fixed. I hope you are getting the argument. But as for the cost per kilometer, I have problem with the politicians. No, the minute that there are engineers as Ghana Highway Authority, Federal Roads Department, and Urban Roads Department. What per kilometer of our roads in this country? They should be explaining to us. Because they are the engineers. They know what goes into the costing aspect of it, especially the survey department of Ghana Highway Authority. And they have the idea. They would have visited the site to know the topography or the nature of the land before they come to the office to do the pricing. All these things, I don't think it should be coming from the ministers. But why are we here? We are here because we made that promise. To the extent that we say we are coming to look at the law. Looking at the law means you are telling somebody that maybe you are coming to amend the law. Maybe or to remove sole source aspect of the law from the Procurement Act. In that case, leaving what? Maybe competitive tendering. And I ask myself, we are entering the rainy season. And you and I know, part of the country, when it rains heavily, some of the roads are cut off. At that level, you need 3, 4, 5 months to embark on procurement processes to get it complete before you go to Babili Yaga Road. Last 2 years, it was cut off. This is a road that is linking Burkina Faso to Ghana and Hamble, Babili, Lora, Nandom area, producing foodstuffs, getting into and transporting it to Tachima. So you need 4 or 5 months to be able to get the procurement processes complete before you get a contractor to go and fix that road. What would have been the economy and the life of the people around that area, even in the country as a whole? Because I know foodstuffs travel from that area to Tachima, to Western region, Western North, and to Accra. So there are emergency cases that you have to, you see, sometimes we blame ourselves. The policy or the framers of that law envisage there could be a situation and sometimes that we don't have time and we need to look for somebody to intervene and fix the problem before we regularize things. But because in our quest to get power, all manner of promises were made. Today, you are now from radio station to radio station, TV station to TV station and defending. But I personally don't see anything wrong. Because when Fourth Estate requested the information, the speed at which the Ministry of Roads and Highway responded in giving out the data of the Big Push project will tell you that there's no any bad intention behind the award of the projects through sole sourcing. And the critical important I want to make before I move on is the empowering of the local contractors mentioned by Hamza is very, very important. If we go into the road sector, largely it's been dominated by foreigners. And if a policy decision is not taken, at least it will get to a time that there won't be much more local contractors in that industry. So, and it has always been some of us our view that we have to be taking not only the road sector, many sectors, taking our own people on board and be conscious. Sometimes policy direction, we have to let our people come in, just empower the local people. So, using the sole source to get the people, especially with the time they want to achieve that, And looking at the details of what Fourth Estate has presented to us, they are not telling us that maybe monies have been lost or people have chopped money, or even when it comes to the area of costing, they have not even been definite about it. Their major problem so far is the sole source that Sena Company has given this project. Apia Danko has given. It has not been competitive tendering. It is sole source. But as to whether the cost is okay, maybe you have the capacity to execute the work within that particular frame time that is stated in the contract. That is not what they are telling us. And then I ask question. I say, what are you trying to tell us? It is only now because the law they have used is a law. There's no any wrongdoing. Sole source is part of it. Maybe if you look at the law critically and you are awarding the project, first of all, the ministry is concerned about the capacity of the contractor, whether he should be able to do the work, and the time given for the contractor to do the work is very, very, very critical. The capacity of the contractor is. So if we go to the law, it is also can even inform that if you don't have the capacity, you can be denied because you want to achieve a purpose. I hope you are getting the argument. But all these questions, they are not asking it because it doesn't bother them. I said, so why are you bringing us this information? Is it only the minister's claim that 40% of Big Push project has been awarded through source? That's the only problem. So, okay, if that is it, so we have heard. So how have we lost? Has the state lost money so far? Have we lost money? Or have you investigated the 100% or the 40% that has been awarded sole source? Are the contractors on site? If they are on site, is work progressing? If work is progressing, okay, contract A, B, C, D, how so far? Is it 30%? Is it 40%? Is it 50%? As against the time it was awarded. So I think, in my view, that is what Fourth Estate should be telling us. But as for the issue of sole source contracts, so now I can sit here and bet you, NDC will not touch the Procurement Act. NDC government under John Dramani Mahama will not change or amend the Procurement Act and remove sole sourcing. Future governments that will come will not touch the sole source, the Procurement Act, and will not change it because there's a reason why it is there. And that reason, it is not to change this country. Well, there are emergency situations. And you need emergency interventions. And you can't do it when you don't have the law backing you to do it. So let's leave the politics when we get to some of these things. That is why I started by saying, because in their quest to get political power, they were on the past administration on sole source. See now, we are discussing, you are a media man. If you go to many of the sectors, ministries, so far, 1.5 years or 1 year, some 3 months into the administration, many of them have embarked on sole source contracts. But that is not the problem. My problem is if at the end of the day maybe the contract has inflated, just like what he was saying, and then now that we are hearing the Value for Money Act is being passed, but you see, the Minister of Finance too, it's just the laws are becoming so many that it will choke the system. Now you have bring a commitment authorization. Do you know what it means? Now no department or ministry or agency can go ahead to award a project if the commitment authorization letter is not received from the Minister of Finance. And in my findings, it is only the Minister of Finance who will sign the letter before the agency, ministry or department can go ahead in the award of contract. Now, we have the Procurement Act, which is also there. So now if we go into the details of the act, all these things that we are talking, it is entailed in the act. See, now you are bringing it, the Office of Value for Money Audit. Aren't we compounding issues here? So it will get to a point, it will take 1 year to award a project. By the time the contractor or the supplier would have supplied or the contractor would have gone to site, the purpose of the project would have even elapsed. So let's take a critical look at these things and stop the politics. But when you are promising, be measured. when you are promising, be measured. You might not know. That is where the NDC government they are today, especially with the road ministry. 40% sole source, person see it wrong. That is the road ministry. Other ministries would have also embarked on that. But the argument is that, are they performing? Are they delivering? We have no short change. They have not been too much over pricing of the contract. So when I see people explaining the cost aspect, I expect the engineers or the technical group of people at the ministry to explain to the people of Ghana. So you can have 2 kilometers in Accra, have 1 kilometer in Wa, but the price will not be the same. And if you ask the engineers, the technocrats will tell you why that variations. And I don't think if it happens like that, it's wrong.
Thank you. This is service, and even in Europe, companies hire employees as and when. How can you hire workers or keep workers when you don't have any contracts? What kind of businessman will do that? There's also Vivian who says the fourth estate sits in their air-conditioned cars and offices and talk about sourcing road construction. They should travel to Hohwe, for instance, and experience the suffering we have gone through for 8 years under NPP, looking at the terrible nature of roads in Ghana. Who cares about sole sourcing or competitive bidding? In fact, all roads should be sole sourced for a faster work for Ghanaians to have respite. The fourth estate in this matter are enemies of progress and should not be taken seriously. That is coming from Vivian, who sent that. Lara. Yes, sir.
Between 2018 and now and 2024, when another was given power, that over 40 billion Ghana cedis had been spent on roads. Over 40 billion had been spent on roads. And look at the state of our roads. And to think that doesn't pay the claim of the road ministry, that's 99% of all those contracts were through sole sourcing. So you see, the problem the NPP is facing in this discussion is one that borders more on credibility than anything else. 40 billion was spent on roads in the year of roads. What's the state of our roads? So, in fact, it's a problem we all face because nobody wants to listen to the NPP based on their own record. But having said that, I'm telling you, you did 99%, you spent 40 billion on roads. What's the state of our roads? You spent 40 billion, right? Year of roads 1, year of roads 2, year of roads 3. What's the state of roads in this country? You understand? So how for the NPP there, you see when they speak on issues that are very important, then they make that issue even lose credibility. So I beg NPP, they should keep quiet and let us deal with this issue. See, we all took upon ourselves a procurement act. You understand? And for me, in all these issues, I think the issue is how principled and how committed are we to enforcing the law. Because I agree that we need to build private capacity. I agree that we need to empower local contractors. I agree with all that, but it must be done in accordance, you understand, to the law. Now, I'm looking at the Procurement Act, and I'm looking at the grounds for which we can engage in sole sourcing. You understand? Because sole sourcing ought to be the exception. It's not the norm. We know that in procurement, there are 3 ways in which you can do tender. You can do competitive tender, you can do restrictive tender, and you can do sole sourcing contracts. So that if your focus is to build private contractors, then the solution is not through sole sourcing. You can do restricted tender because there are about right now, what my brother Hamza was saying, there are about 20 Ghanaians that have been empowered. You need to empower more Ghanaians also, because you don't want to. So even if you want to restrict it to just the Ghanaians, you can do that through restrictive tendering as against so the 20 Ghanaians who were empowered. You want to pick just one. Why do you want to pick just one? Is it that they have some skill that only they have? Because when you read section 40 of the Procurement Act, It says that a procurement entity may engage in single source procurement under Section 41 with the approval of the board in the following exceptional circumstances. And these exceptional circumstances, where the goods or services are only available from a particular supplier, to where there's an urgent need, and it goes up. Because you see, I'm saying that NPP do not have credibility, but that is not an excuse to act in a manner which does not conform to the law. Because we don't want a situation again where some other leader will come and do subject us to what another subjected us to. And it shouldn't matter whether that leader is NPP or NDC or whatever it is. You understand? So yes, I'm listening to them. I understand that we need to build local capacity. Well, another thing, we passed this law, the Local Content Act. How have we enforced it? How have we enforced the law, where the foreigners have continually used Ghanaians as what's called a sieve to go around that law? And we need to build in fact, I'll support that, but we must do that in accordance with the law, so that even in this Procurement Act, what stops us from saying that, listen, the only grounds under which we should even consider a foreign entity in any procurement activity is where the locals themselves do not have any. And when I say locals, it's not about a foreign company coming to form a company in Ghana. I'm talking about a local company owned by Ghanaians. Yeah, because I count everything foreign, and they always go around the law and so sourcing. So you see, there's good reason for why the president has asked for a report. Because he's president. I'm not sure His Excellency John Mahama, like or any other president, will have the time to follow what's it called every individual. But it is good leadership that where he's heard the cries of the people, not to be trapped in the issue of NPP did 99%. Because that's you can't run away from that. You don't have credibility. So let us give the necessary. No, you don't have it. That's what I'm advising you, Mojib. If you want to get that Mojib, punch, is it punch? It's not a fact that you use 99% of your contracts with a true sourcing. 99%. And then you think you have the moral right to speak. In fact, and that's why this is Alhaja is a gentleman and ladies intellectual platform. When you are speaking, we don't speak even if we disagree. I think everything you're saying, I agreed.
You know the thing.
But that's serious minds always watch Alhaja. We should keep the standard. You understand? Listen, you see, politics in this country is changing. Usually how we do our politics, so they misbehave, we kick them out, and we suddenly forget what they did for us to kick them out. This time we won't forget. We won't forget the evil you subjugated us to. We won't forget that you spent 40 billion on roads that we cannot see. We won't forget that your purpose for procurement was not to solve the needs of the people, but rather to fill your pockets with money. We are in a country where we have just about 169 emergency beds. In this country, you must pray that you don't fall sick. You must pray that you don't fall sick. You understand? Anything you want to listen to you. No, we won't listen to you. So that's why I say, you see, you can leave them because I can clearly see you don't believe in them. Come and join us. Now you get some credibility. But insofar as you are there, NPP, a party that 99% of their procurements were through sole sourcing, a party that spent 40 billion on roads. Where are those roads? Master, 40 billion. Where are those roads? You understand? So I want to commend His Excellency John Mahama for this step. He must investigate the issue. He took an oath to protect, defend, and preserve the laws of Ghana. Those laws include this law. That states out clearly for us circumstances under which sole sourcing ought to be done. Understand? And if the focus is to empower our locals, then I'll support that initiative 100%, but it must be done within. See, we shouldn't be shy to have a law that states that. We shouldn't be shy to have a law that says that in our procurement, we are going to give to Ghanaian, so not Ghanaian, so you come and register here, it's 100% owned. No, companies owned 100% by Ghanaians, we give those contracts, and we only consider the foreigners where we can't find a Ghanaian who can do that. And even that there'll be a strategy to empower those Ghanaians. We should be trying to put it in our law. Because you go to the USA, they have the Small Business Act. In that Small Business Act, they stated clearly that a certain percentage of all their contracts will be reserved for American citizens. They boldly say they are pursuing an American agenda. Why can't we also boldly say that we are pursuing a Ghanaian agenda? You get the picture. So yes, His Excellency, I support you. Go into it. Ensure that they do the right thing. As in, you may disagree with His Excellency Jomama, but I have no doubt about his commitment to reset this country. But it's not easy. One man. People who use his name to. I'm not in any way saying that Governor Abuja is doing that, but I'm saying that if his focus is to empower the local business, he shouldn't be shy to say it. As I'm doing a restrictive tendering, and that restrictive, only Ghanaian businesses can. But the solution is not in sole sourcing. We cannot be seen to perpetuating the crime, the evil Mujib's people subjugated this country to. And I've listened to him, and he says that, in fact, a lot of the contracts in the ministry were just a continuation from their time. Sole sourcing they gave, that's how dangerous they are. Sole sourcing they give, they've just decided, listen, to stop that culture of when the new government comes, we stop what the old regime did. They've just decided to pay them, even when the rules were not done. So, I support our politics there. My view has always been like the view of the late Dr. Kwesi. Everything is politics. Everything we do is politics. But there's a difference between politics and partisanship. They are two different things. So for the politics there, it will be there. If you understand what politics is, we should just put the interest of Ghana ahead of our partisan consideration when we are taking those decisions, and we should be committed to enforcing the law in whichever way or form and shape. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lara. Correct. Please.
Well, I think largely, I agree with what has been said.
Yeah.
So all the other three panelists have said virtually the same thing, which is that sole sourcing is not illegal. Sole sourcing is legal under our laws, and that there are conditions under which sole sourcing may be done.
Yeah.
So the question is whether or not the sole sourcing which was done in the award of the big push projects complied with the law. That's the issue. You understand? If it complied with the law, then there's no issue to be discussed. Okay? What our friends from the New Patriotic Party are doing is that, look, at one point, President Mahama and the NDC criticized sole sourcing. And therefore, if they've done sole sourcing, let's go for their necks.
Yeah.
But that's problematic. Because I remember that when President John Mahama and some people in the NDC were criticizing sole sourcing, the NPP came up very strongly and said, we haven't acted against the law. I remember. So what has changed?
Yeah.
If not acting against the law was your defense, why is it that not acting against the law is not the defense today? It beats me, you understand? So for me, let's go back to the law. What has been done, does it meet the criteria set by the law? Finish. You see, there's an aspect of all of this which is also very important for me, which is simply that if you look at the big push projects, not all the projects were initiated by the Bahama administration. Because some of the projects had already been initiated by the previous administration, like the Swami interchange. And the contracts had been awarded already. And I'm told that there are 23 of such contracts. That ought to be taken into consideration in this discussion. Okay. For me, I recall, under their champion government. Perhaps if you take out the Nkrumah government, one government that did a lot of roads, there was massive road construction all over the country, there was so much construction, was their champion government. I was then a young reporter, first in Accra, and then eventually in Cape Coast. And I went on the inspection of these roads. Those days, the major roads were constructed by the State Construction Corporation, SCC. Ghana State Construction Corporation did most of the roads. And they were first-class roads. Excellent construction. Then beyond the State Construction Corporation were companies like KB and Sons, KS Annan, Mojabi Edom, and so on. Indigenous Ghanaian companies. How come that in a space of 30, 35, 40 years, all the Ghanaian companies have died? And now, most of our contracts are awarded to foreign companies. One of the very big companies then was SK Menu and Sons. Those of you who remember SK Menu and Sons, big contracting firm. What happened to all of these indigenous Ghanaian companies? What happened to them? Is it possible to have a new regime in which we would have a state construction company with the capacity of the state construction company which operated at that champion? Is it possible again to have companies like KS Annan, KB and Sons and so on? Is it possible? Because you see, all these foreign companies, when they come and they do the contracts and they make money, they send the money back to their countries of origin. One of the reasons why the city cannot become stable is the repatriation of profits. You understand? It's one of the major reasons. So all this talk about sole sourcing and so on, I want it to be properly situated. How does it affect the economy? Does it enable us to develop indigenous capacity? And if we develop indigenous capacity, how does that indigenous capacity help us to revive the national economy? These are the most important questions. You understand? When the argument is presented in such a way as to suggest political point scoring, I get very worried. Because that should not be the purpose of the argument. When the argument is presented in such a way as to just suggest that we did it, you criticize us so you cannot do it, then there's a problem. The problem is whether the law was complied with, and if the law was complied with, what are the outcomes that we expect? Would those outcomes be beneficial to the state of Ghana? That's where we should leave the debate. You know, any other thing, as far as I'm concerned, is a waste of our time. You understand? Now, happily, President John Dramani Mahama has said, or has requested for the full text, you know, of the report which was put out by Fourth Estate, and he's asked for an investigation. Indeed, one of the most brilliant submissions that I've heard on this matter is a submission which was made by Nana Kumia, who is a spokesperson for the New Patriotic Party. And he simply said that, look, the president has ordered investigations. Let's wait for the outcome of the investigations, and then on the basis of the investigations, we can move forward. I think that that's reasonable. That's a reasonable position to take. Unfortunately, other members of the same communication team are saying that no, we will not agree. I was with one of them on Wednesday, and he said that we will not agree that the president investigates the matter because road contracts are discussed at cabinet. This is a matter of major government projects and so on. So who is going to set up the committee? If somebody wants the matter investigated, who should it be? The presidential candidate of the NPP is the one who is to set up the committee? Or what? You may say that, okay, let Parliament set up the committee. You are in a tiny minority in Parliament. So it doesn't resolve anything. So I am sometimes surprised at this grandstanding, which leads us nowhere. This is just empty grandstanding which leads us nowhere. We must always get value for money. And value for money includes the pursuit of the interests of indigenous contractors. Finish.
Thank you. Thank you very much. In fact, Aaron Oduya Mensah says you should add the Eagle Star. I don't know.
Yes, Eagle Star. Eagle Star was also one of those companies. Eagle Star.
Then there's a Cool Squash who says, yes, an NPP man in movement for change uniform. Alan's man knows what he's saying. I think he's talking about you. Then earlier he moved to movement for change the better.
No, it's not United Party. It's not United Party. It's not United Party.
United Party, yes.
I'm not PENDREAM TV. Now, so far so good. Say open online portal e Ghana. Nipa share, nipa follow, nipa comment here. To my best of knowledge, without any biases, I PENDREAM TV.